Welcome to Navijer Recaps. Today I'm going to explain a thriller comedy film called Miller's Girl. Let's move on to the story of the film. At the beginning of the story, a young girl called Cairo is shown, and it is revealed that her parents are lawyers and are not home all the time. Therefore, Cairo lives alone in her family's house. Because of this, the lonely Cairo has started writing storybooks as a hobby, and she goes to school through a big forest. She is going to school this day very excited because she has joined a new class and her new teacher is also a storybook writer like him. Cairo goes early in the morning and meets this teacher, and he is surprised that she came early in the morning. This teacher's name is Jonathan Miller. It is revealed that he is working as a teacher in this school because he could not become a successful author. Since Cairo has arrived and the class hasn't started yet, Jonathan Miller asks her to read a book that has been recommended to the other students in the class until they arrive. She says that she has finished reading all the books that have been recommended. At this time, another girl comes here and it is revealed that she is a girl who has repeated Jonathan's class. And she is Cairo's best friend. Since the friend has also come, these two decide to go out and have something to eat. After these two leave, Jonathan is surprised that Cairo has read all the books and checks what books she has read. And at this time, Jonathan notices that she is reading a book suitable only for adults. While Jonathan is reading this book, one of his friends, a teacher from this school, comes. His name is Boris, and he grabs the book that Jonathan is reading and starts reading it as if it is a joke. After Boris leaves, Jonathan sees that Cairo has a book he wrote. When Jonathan comes home that night, he finds that his wife Beatrice is very busy. Wanting to get his wife's attention, Jonathan says that one of his students at school is reading one of his books. But at the same time, Beatrice receives a call from one of her friends, so she does not pay attention to Jonathan. But after some time these two started kissing each other and getting closer to each other. Jonathan won't get a chance to get close to his wife because Beatrice gets a call again. The next day Jonathan tells all this to Boris, and Boris starts making fun of him to divert his mind. At this time, these two see that Cairo is coming to school from the side of the jungle. At first Jonathan doesn't care about them, but later asks if he is not afraid to come to school from the jungle side. At this time, Cairo says that there is only me to be afraid of in the jungle. After saying this, we can see that Jonathan is laughing a lot at this. When Boris leaves here and walks to his class, Winnie falsely drops her books on the floor next to him. But Boris knows that she did this on purpose, so he goes to Winnie and asks what he wants. This incident shows us that Cairo is smiling. After that, Cairo goes and tells Winnie that she is just acting crazy. After school, it is shown that these two go to Cairo's house and spend time. At this time, Cairo is a bit confused because he has asked for his college admission. What is the biggest achievement he has achieved in his life? It is revealed that even though she has done many things in her life, none of those things are the greatest achievements. At this time Winnie says to write in the admission that Cairo has an affair with a teacher, but Cairo does not have such an affair. And she says Jonathan is 20 years older than her. But Winnie convinces Cairo that things like this are normal in the world now. After Winnie started talking about Jonathan, Cairo started to have feelings for him. The next day at school, Cairo looks at Jonathan strangely and he looks at her the same way. Before the end of the class, Jonathan comes to her and asks her to come alone after the class and meet him. After that, Jonathan with his wife invites Boris to a dinner out. Happy with this invitation, Boris dances and leaves. After Boris leaves, Jonathan does the same dance and sees Cairo coming here. Cairo can't stop laughing after seeing this dance. These two talk to each other and Jonathan tells Cairo that he is very impressed with her after reading a paragraph written by her. By this he says that Cairo can be a good writer and can write a short story in her favorite style. She promises to write this story about her favorite author, and if this is successful, he promises to give her maximum marks in the midterm. Cairo agrees to this without thinking twice. Before leaving, Cairo reveals that she has read all of Jonathan's books. And to Jonathan's surprise, he reads a chapter of his book word for word. Surprised by this, Jonathan tells Cairo to come see him next weekend, where they can talk more about the assignment. That night, Jonathan is having dinner with his wife and Boris, and Winnie comes in as a waitress. Beatrice sees her and says she is Jonathan's student and asks Jonathan if she is the girl he said earlier. Jonathan says this is not her. At this point it is revealed that Beatrice is jealous of Jonathan's interest in Cairo. Because of this, she starts talking down to Jonathan in front of Boris. She says Jonathan used to be a good writer, but now he is just a teacher. During the weekend, Cairo came to the place Jonathan told her and was sitting on a chair. Jonathan came from behind and whispered in her ear. He then approaches her, whereupon the band appears in front of Jonathan and begins to sing a poem. Jonathan listens intently to this poem and Cairo can't stop looking at him. After this event, she comes out and is lighting a cigarette when Jonathan approaches her. When Cairo shares this cigarette with Jonathan, he accepts it very willingly. The next day, Cairo is seen coming to school from the forest side dressed in a sexy outfit. Jonathan asks her about this, but she does not answer. This is why Boris decides to leave here. After Boris leaves, Cairo sits next to Jonathan and the two seem to be getting very close. When Jonathan goes to class, he gets a message from his wife that he needs to go to a room to have sex. Immediately liking this, Jonathan decides to leave early to meet his wife. But Cairo finds him and says that some parts of the short story are finished and she wants to know his opinion about it. But Jonathan doesn't care much for her and he leaves here and asks her to get on with it. After he leaves, Winnie climbs on Jonathan's desk and starts teasing Cairo by talking like him. She makes fun of Boris coming here and takes his phone and puts it on her bottom. But Boris is not going to say anything. Jonathan goes home, but Beatrice is busy and their plan fails. Jonathan is very confused by this. Just then, Jonathan gets a call from Cairo who says that he accidentally left his phone in Jonathan's bag, and she asks if Jonathan can bring the phone to her house. Jonathan's plan goes awry, so he says goodbye to his wife and decides to leave to deliver Cairo's phone. But on the way, it starts raining and he goes to Cairo's house and sees her coming to him in a sexy dress. After some time they start kissing. When Jonathan got home and was sitting at the table with his wife, Jonathan received an email from Cairo. Beatrice, his wife, heard this noise and said that such noises disturb my work. Because of this, Jonathan decides to move to another of his offices outside the house. He goes and checks this email and finds that it is the story of the short story Cairo wrote. Jonathan prints this story and begins to tell it. When he reads this, he realizes that this story is about a relationship between a school teacher and a student. Jonathan realizes that Cairo wrote this story about her and him. The story is so sexy that Jonathan seems to be dreaming about the character as he reads it. The next day, Jonathan meets Cairo at school, but he doesn't talk like he used to. When Cairo asks about this, he doesn't answer and says that he doesn't like the story she wrote at all. Cairo says she wrote the story about Jonathan and her. But on the other hand, Jonathan says that there is no relationship between him and her. He says that he is a teacher and she is a student. After saying this, when Cairo's heart breaks and tears fall from his eyes, Jonathan says to write that story again. She is told that if she does not write this story, she will fail in the midterm. Angered by this, Cairo says that her story is absolutely perfect and that Jonathan is very afraid of this story because he has written a more successful story than him. She taunts him and says no one reads the books of an old gossip like you. Saying that, she leaves angrily and decides to put this story in the principal's mailbox. Later on the way home, Cairo started drinking with Vinny. It can be seen that Jonathan's face, who came home at this time, is very confused. Jonathan's wife questions him about this and Jonathan decides to tell her the story Cairo wrote. Beatrice also feels romantic when she hears this story and she comes to him and tells him to continue the story. Just as the two are about to get close, unfortunately, Boris arrives and this worries Jonathan even more. The next scene shows Cairo and Vinny leaving a message for Boris, but Boris doesn't answer, so they decide to send a dirty photo to get his attention. When these two take off their clothes and kiss, they take a photo and send it to Boris. Seeing this, Boris decides to leave Jonathan's house as soon as possible. At this time, Jonathan receives a call and it is revealed that the call is from the school's human resources department. Because of this, Jonathan decides to tell his wife what happened between him and Cairo. At this time, Beatrice asks if all this is happening because of a book written by a student. She is not sure about this, so she asks Jonathan if there is any connection between the student and Jonathan, but Jonathan denies what she is asking. The next day, Cairo shows up absent from his class. It is revealed that the principal has invited her to the office and Jonathan will have to go here as well. Principal asks them what is going on between them. At this point, Cairo decides to tell her everything. Cairo says only Jonathan had a midterm test and we met and smoked. After that it was Jonathan's turn to answer this, but he couldn't give a straight answer. Because of this, the principal figures it all out and suspends Jonathan until she investigates further. Jonathan tells Boris these things, but he says that if everything was done with limits, this problem wouldn't happen. Back home, Jonathan reveals to his wife that he has been fired. Suspicious that she was fired for such a small story, Beatrice asks again if they were having an affair. Jonathan says no, but Beatrice doesn't believe him, and the two get into an argument. Finally, Beatrice decides to divorce him. Vinny comes to meet Cairo and says that what he did was so bad that even Jonathan lost his job. But Cairo doesn't care too much about this. Cairo says Jonathan underestimated her, but now he knows what she can do. After that, Cairo with a cruel smile says that this is the biggest victory of his life and writes everything that happened. Also, the movie ends when Cairo wonders if Jonathan will write a book again because he is unemployed.